Expense at work is a very configurable product, and in this short demonstration I'll show how it can be used to manage the allocation of business or private usage to phone calls made by employees. Instead of importing statements from, or as well as importing statements from credit card companies, we can also import phone statements from mobile phone operators or landline phone operators. Here, for example, if we look at the expense at work setup configuration module, we can see that we can specify for an individual employee a phone number. Here, 603-425-000. In fact, you can have up to 10 phone numbers or indeed credit card numbers associated with an employee. Then we can imagine that there is a phone statement that contains for each phone call one line. It may be in Excel or it may be in some other format. We've got the calling number, the called number, the date, the time, the duration, the country called, and the charges. These statements would differ, of course, from one operator to another. And then what we do in expense at work, in the configuration part, the administration part, is to import a phone statement. So what I'm going to do here is to pick up that phone statement that we had, that phone bill. Here we see it, and here we see how those individual columns are mapped to fields in expense at work. And then we'll run this and we'll post the file. So what the system is doing here is matching the calling number to each transaction in the statement and then creating a form for that particular user. So now if I log in as 0001, we'll see that there is a statement here, phone statement. And if I open that, we'll see those transactions that we saw earlier in the Excel spreadsheet. Now, of course, the business of marking an individual transaction as an individual phone call as business or private is, of course, tedious. But what the system can do is pick up the allocation that an employee has made earlier and determine the status automatically. So if I click on pre-fill and save here, we'll see that in this case the system has detected that for this particular called number, both private and business were specified. So here I have to specify that it's either private or business. In some cases it has determined straight away that it was a business call. So private here, private, business, and private, or business here. And that's all I have to do. When I submit that, we have the option of forwarding this for authorization. This is something that you would perhaps only rarely do, but you could specify that if the form has a value above a certain number, then it will be forwarded to somebody else. So here it's going to Susan Davis, who could review this entire form and decide whether to authorize it or not. The transactions could in fact be individually returned, or the whole form partially returned, or the entire form returned. Here we're going to authorize it. There is also optionally another way in which you might pick up exceptions for additional approval or authorization. And here we can see that we've set up two kinds of additional approval. Specific countries might require approval. So here we have some calls made to Germany and the Czech Republic. And because of the settings I've done in the system, these calls are being additionally put forward for approval. I may decide to approve them all. Optionally, of course, I could query this back to the original employee as well. And then I've got some other kinds of approval which are based on the value of the calls. So calls above a certain value are also being forwarded for approval. They could be queried as well. Now, of course, you can also do any kind of reporting on this. Here we have, for example, a call summary that says for each employee for each period what the total value of calls is, and sorted by business or private. And you can do the usual things here of summarizing by private and business, and so on, exporting to Excel. You might have some overall management reports, such as this, looking at total charges by month as a graph. And you might do a specific inquiry, say that you want to look at all calls that have been made to Chile, for example. There are many things you can do here. Now, typically, the point of getting employees to specify whether their calls are business or private is that if they're private calls, you want to charge them. And that's done either by sending the private call values to your accounting system or directly to your payroll system. So we have a mechanism here that would enable you. In fact, I'm going to show you this from the configuration and administration module. We have a mechanism here for exporting to payroll all the transactions that are, we can do a preview here. All the transactions that need to be reclaimed for Michael Grant. In fact, you would reclaim them in summary form, and you can send across to the payroll or to the accounting system whatever details are required there. So this was just to illustrate that expense at work is very configurable and can be used not only for ordinary expenses and for the processing of credit card statements, but also for the management of phone bills.